If it isn't clear, this is the first time we're doing this. Um, this is our podcast we're calling Workshape's Field Notes. We're going to talk about what's going on in the industry, what we're doing at our events, what we're seeing and hearing in our respective work, and muse on relevant topics.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a while and we were like, well, let's just start with this one. We're going to do it after the other in-person events, but we're just going to grab a couple of folks from each one to have some learning and get into some stuff more and then just hear what people think. And as a way of sharing it in a different sort of format other than just like doing a LinkedIn post or, why
So,
don't you start with just like your 30
who
second
the heck are
elevator.
we?
Yeah. Who are you? And what are you all about?
Sure. I'm Ramsey Madsen, the president of MTRL. We're a bespoke and custom furniture manufacturer as well as design studio. Our goal is primarily to help companies co-design and create furnishings that fit their unique needs for their facilities. So the studio is both industrial designers, mechanical engineers, and makers. And we're often designing objects that are branded specific to the location and for unique functional and aesthetic requirements.
And I am Sarah Drew. I head up workplace for Gap Inc. here in San Francisco. Newer to San Francisco. I moved down here in August, but not new to the industry. I've been doing this for 23 years, wearing various hats along the way, from end user to service provider to furniture installers, like you name it. I've pretty much have almost done it, which has been pretty great in having the experiences I've had. I feel like now I could put that all together under one big Gap Inc. umbrella, which I'm very stoked about. So that's me.
Thank you for sharing. So let's start with your impressions of that day. You both attended our Workshape Labs event on January 30th, a couple weeks ago. That was in partnership with Trebellar and Pivot. And we want to have a conversation about your impressions, reflections, what you felt like was valuable, how you might approach your work differently from the insights that you got that day.
Well, Brett and I already just keep talking about it since that day. So I think I'll just kind of start because I think I was even just texting you, calling you on my commute in yesterday, being like, so we talked about this. How would you like to do it? And so it's really stuck with me. I think the biggest question overall for me, I'll just say real quick, as being new, I was one, just grateful for being around peers in an area that I'm new to and already feel like I have such a great amount of connections coming out of that. Ramsey, you're one of them and you've already connected me to people. I think we
Yeah.
all are a bunch of connectors at heart. I am so grateful for the micro network that I just built coming out of that. But for me, I think the most intriguing thing, besides all the conversations we had and the different way that we put ourselves through various vignettes of approaching things, was the concept of, can we finally talk about meeting differently? And can we finally talk about things that are different than meeting norms of like, start 5 minutes late, have an agenda, be respectful of people on camera, and actually say we could create a new way that meets humans where they're at to meet what the work that they're doing where they're at. And that to me has just been like percolating in my brain, as Brett knows, ever since that day.
Awesome.
There were several things that struck me. First off, no shade here. The way it was introduced to me from Pat and others actually didn't have a ton of contextual detail or like prescriptive nature of what we were supposed to do. And I'm glad it didn't. The event started in a way that was very organic and didn't position a lot of people based on titles or importance or other things. And I don't mean any, offense to anybody, but I liked that. It actually was a very leveling feeling. And
Mhm.
it was just people kind of getting together and like, I don't know why. I hope that was by design, Brett. It sounded like it was. And that was done really well, Brett, Sandy, both. I
Yeah.
think the idea of people just kind of coming together that respect each other and could engage and do things was really pleasant. I hope you keep doing that. The analog nature was another thing that I think I've just come to like feel like I have to infuse technology in everything I'm doing, both AI and everything else. And that was super refreshing. In fact, that was probably my biggest takeaway was designers in like I'm an industrial design background, the march towards technology is being like plugged into so many areas of what we do. I don't draw a lot anymore. And I think in some weird way that like I don't write in script on post-it notes very much anymore. That's a rare event. It is almost always technologically driven. I'm 3D modeling. I'm not drawing as much. Like so that refreshed of a way of like thinking analog and working analog and that was really inspiring to me. And then I don't I I was probably too punchy and silly. Like if I look back on the day, I had a lot of the thing I do like when I feel comfortable. And I think that's really good in a long time. And I'm not trying to offer
Hands
platitudes.
down.
It really was. And I
Yep.
felt like I made a genuine connection with people. So I hats off to you for making and designing an event that checked all those boxes. But for me, those are rare events. And it did. It led to connections and people that almost felt like, no, I feel like I could like go to lunch with these people and talk about Sarah and I still have a thing we need to do and talk about innovation, the term innovation. So anyways, that's a lot of words, but well done.
That's another
Really loved
podcast.
it. Yes, that's another podcast for sure.
Can I actually just on a personal note, Ramsey, I love the way that you talked about that. I had no clue what I was stepping into. Brett approached me on Tuesday. I heard about this
Right.
event and then I was there. Like I had no idea what I was stepping into, and I love it for that reason. And whether, like you said, intentional or not, we all showed up on the same plane together, but not necessarily the same level.
Yeah.
But just on a personal thing, I appreciate your sarcasm note because hey Joe, what's with the pants? It's casual Friday. That's my sarcasm. And like that's no one will get that if unless you actually were there, I guess. Follow your post, Brett. But I usually straight up, very real. I get migraines from these type of events. They create such anxiety for me because they feel forced, they feel unnatural. And I feel like I have to still wear a little bit of my business persona, which actually in business, I don't wear a business persona. Like I am me today. Like my employees, like in my team and my peeps will say, this is me on stage, anywhere. This is where I am. And the fact that I walked away with that event, not only with no migraine, feeling so energized and so grateful, speaks volumes for how these normal events also have a physical just impact on our being because they are not approached in the way that this was. So that's a big kudos. Thank you.
This
Well,
is so
Thank you for not giving me a migraine.
yeah. Well, that's really great to hear because when
yeah, it feels like a low bar, but I straight.
well, but I think that's a big part of where we started with all this was how do we, well, going way back, this started with the idea of these events started with how do you keep the conversation going? Like you go to, typically you go to an event, there's people speaking, someone says something thoughtful, someone has a good question, you have a side conversation with somebody afterwards and you get excited about that and you have this little bit of buzz or energy from the thing. And then everybody just goes back to their normal lives. And
Okay.
we started with the premise of, well, what can we do to change what it is to that we're doing together, that we do things that are more memorable and meaningful. But then also, I too, having attended more business development functions than I can count in my adult life and I can't, I mean, unless I found somebody at one, you find somebody who's a good friend and you end up just talking to them and they're obviously not doing business
Mhm.
to you're around and mingle with one another or sit through a presentation of something that may or may not be interesting to them and have to kind of, it's the idea of forcing you to sit in rows and then creating these like this group and we're cliques and we're seeing people we know and you want to talk to somebody, oh, they're talking to them and the whole thing. So for us, the idea of no name, a name tag that just has your name, your first name, very intentional. The the idea that the event is meant to be comfortable and it's meant for you to find your own way into it. I mean, we backed into, I don't think it was totally intentional until we started doing it. This whole idea of intentional friction of people showing up and doing something, just getting to know each other because they're not thinking about, oh, I'm not at ease. These are new people. They're doing something, usually with their hands, and they're focused on that. And in doing it, they learn, they may not know how to do it and they learn from the person next to them. And then next thing you know, they're connecting. And then all of a sudden everybody's talking. We had this premise with these events that the first hour is, there is no agenda. we're all just here. We're all just showing up. And if you show up at a quarter after and I show up at 45 minutes after, it doesn't matter. And I think, the idea that we're getting there, we're getting connected and in a relaxed sort of way, because technically no one has anywhere to go because we very intentionally don't tell you what you're going to be doing all day. And it's not like, well, this is the agenda and I got to get ready because I have this event. And then I'm going to leave that one 10 minutes early and run to this other event that I wanted to hear, or this other speaker. It's instead just being immersed, which is how we tend to live our lives anyway at work. We're constantly not done with this thing, thinking about the next thing already, and then going before we were like, so if we can get you to just be in the moment and be part of what is going on and forget that you're there, that's a big part of what this was all about. And we're finding that if we're thoughtful in the way we do it, you can actually make that happen. Now the question is, can we make this happen in the real world? Can we do these things at offices with companies with people who aren't coming with an open mind,
Yep. Yeah, it's also so great to hear is I think we've mentioned how we started when we started this with social get-togethers for work are fun, but then you're not necessarily learning in a traditional way. You're not it's valuable, but in a different way. Then conferences are you learn stuff, but it's also not fun, gives you migraines. So there has to be a middle ground. So we're trying to like bring something that is valuable, but you're also just having a good time. And so it's really great to hear you both say that you did. And I also didn't know, Sarah, that you just moved here not too long ago. And I'm curious from the both of you. We designed these so that people can connect deeply while doing things. Did you know other people? Like, how many other people did you actually know in the room when you walked in? Ramsey might have a
Brett,
leg up. Just
Um,
barely, Brett. Does that
yeah.
count?
That's awesome.
yeah,
Sarah.
I
knew
only
Brett.
knew the Pivot people, Kat and Jax were participating. I think that's it. I didn't know Brett before that day. I didn't know Sandy or others. So, very few.
I knew Sarah because her and I connected when I was up at Nike because we were sharing the woes of how do you come back to the office on a campus that already had people back to the office. Like it was this, and we really just shared our stories between Portland and here. And it was, Brett, she was my she's my magnet that I go to. I'm like, oh, you're my person. I know somebody here. With
Mhm.
also is unfair to somebody, but like it was her. And then right before, and for the want to say like the best part is too is that you created networking without ever using that word. And that is so lovely. There's nothing that makes me want to decline an invite more or make me show up at an event later than when I see that the first hour or whatever it is dedicated to networking. And I would be like, so I will be showing up right at event start.
We will
So
never
like
Well,
the oh my gosh. But we did it anyway, right? So I left going in knowing one, and I'll call you as a half person, Brett, right? Because it still we're kind of like this newness again after like maybe sitting at a table together 10 years ago at an event. Um, and I left, I think I have almost connected with at least half, if not more, of the people that were there already. Like, so the what has come out of that, I feel like I already have a network and something that in Portland took me years to build when I was new to Portland.
Mm.
So thank you for the leg up.
That's good.
I
That's
appreciate
great to
it.
hear. That's wonderful.
I was just going to add,
Right.
I had an interesting thing happen through this that I'm not sure if I shared this with you, Sandy or Brett. One of the attendees, in walking past the design of something I had done in the showroom, said, "It's astoundingly awful." All right. She made a comment that, okay, I know, like, but I realized after that that was actually, that's for me, I'm so used to critique and so used to like the reception of design, good and bad. Like it's the nature of what I do. And I accepted a long time ago in college, I think, with critiques that you don't take things personally. That's not the point. The point is legitimate, real feedback. And so I welcome that. And I went to Kat and Jackson. I said, something really interesting happened today. And the person didn't know. And that's really good because so for me, I spend a lot of time reviewing designs with clients or people, and it's really hard to get that to happen. But I really need that. And for me, that is a sign of something that is authentic, because real critique is not personal. It's about a collective work together. It was an interesting aside that happened. And yeah, it's not a big deal. I actually agree with her. It was not, or is, it was poorly articulated visually. So I get it. And it made me go away and like want to be better at it. Like that was an interesting aside. And it's evidence to me, I think, of the larger points you were trying to make of the event.
Let's talk about the activities for a minute. So there's a handful of facilitated activities. And just for people listening who didn't know, we had a build your own taco bar in the first hour that we're not calling networking, and an icebreaker with two teams competing to see who could put a picture together correctly with limited information. An activity that had around 5 people in each group between 4 different settings, rotating to tackle different tasks at each. An exercise in which groups created a funny caption together, and a mind map exercise connecting relationships between desired outcomes of the workplace and then things that support it. So, thinking about these activities and what resonated the most for you, what was fun? Which ones were the most valuable, surprising? And then let's talk about those.
I'm going to start with, I'll do, this is very personal, right? Because I think the whole intention of this too was one, observing how your other, whom is in your group is like participating with you and participating in the exercise and the outcomes you're getting of it. It's also like, to me, it's like very much how you feel and I felt like within the moment. I've got my hands down favorite exercise that we did completely wrong, by the way, completely wrong, but I loved it, was the map exercise. Um, Sitting over a table, hunched over a table with a pencil in my hand, and just everybody was kind of just tackling different parts of the country. No roads were making it home, but we were all just sitting there. And actually, it's one of the photos that you posted on LinkedIn. I was like, that's me in my happy place. That's my happy place right there. And it was so good. And it makes me, and like to the next day, I was like, went back to my team and I was like, that's it. We're changing our workplace because we're kind of been in this holding pattern. I'm like, I need my table. I need my place where we all could come together and just pour over things. And that analog piece, Ramsey, like you said, to like just hold that pencil in my hands again and mark things up was super, just huge. And then back that up to our little, my attempt to draw a sloth, in our standing whiteboarding session. And that would be my next one. Got into some really heated debates if it was going to be, the locations we talked about or not, but it was good, right? You want that, like it's healthy tension started kind of coming back again. And then the other one that was my next favorite one, which I think is really bizarre, was when we were all told to sit in our rooms and solve a crossword puzzle, but we couldn't leave our seats. I loved that. So I could just be in my place and just yell out a window, and then be in my place and yell out a window. And it made me so happy. It made me so uncomfortable. The walking conversations as a group. We just botched that. Like, we're like, let's walk as a team because it's the first one we're doing and none of us knew each other. So we didn't, I think, immediately want to start breaking out in groups because the first one we did was a walking conversation and it felt wrong with us not knowing each other to break off. Yet we kept doing the whole, why aren't we walking anymore? Or wait, why we're going too far? Like we kept doing the whole like stop start. So we kind of lost the conversation a little bit. But that one was interesting. And I feel like the last one, obviously, where we all stood around and that just brought it all together. Like that was just like, the icing on the cake. But that was my order of experience. And it reminded me, we've gotten so serious in the workplace. We've gotten so, I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, and I'd be curious if you have been witnessing this too, but we've kind of lost our fun. Everything is incredibly serious. Everything is like all about the shareholders. The world is serious, everything around us. So like to be in a place that was kind of fun, that we could be sarcastic, we could let our guard down and we could share and kind of get messy a little bit. And even if we're not connecting all the right outcomes at one of the things, like, right, to me, it was really, really, really great. And I think that's the part that it made me really miss more than anything, is that this lightness, everything has been so serious, including like, how do we get employees back into the office and what's the presence? And it was just, this is what all our leaders are trying to do. Everything that we did across 5 vignettes, was everything that our leaders want the outcomes of bringing people back into be. And yet we're trying to make it so complicated. And to me, that was such intentional, felt like unplanned simplicity, that an effortless simplicity, but there was such intentionality behind it. I rambled. I went all over the place because it's all bubbling back up. But it was like leaving with a lightness that I haven't felt in a minute since 2020, for sure. So
That's so good to hear. I just want to add some color into this again for people who don't know the activities and weren't there.
yeah.
So, Sarah, what you're talking about is the exercise where you had groups that rotated between four different settings, where the exercise was really about does the task match the setting that you're doing it in. So we had a group,
Mhm.
four of the settings. One was walking meetings and discussing a big idea while you're walking around. And in a group of 4 to 5, that can be tricky. And then
Mhm.
we had a math exercise where everyone was around a table. So there was some semblance of equity to the task at hand. And there were clues where you're able to pick points on the map, and then when you connect all the dots, it's the answer, and it
Edit.
spelled out something.
Just
And
get something.
and the another setting is where there were
It's
solo,
worth it.
desk carols, and people had a crossword to work on individually, but you could work on it together, you just couldn't get up. And then finally, a whiteboarding area where you had to convey something either through whiteboarding or gesturing, which is proven to help convey and have your concepts be more understood when people can see your whole body. So those are the four
Mhm.
sort of settings and tasks. Yeah. That can I
Yeah.
can I
Just add
yeah.
one thing real quick that came to mind when you were talking about this. I just want to go back and like rephrase that walking conversation. And I want to double down on the fact that it was a bunch of strangers getting asked to talk about a big idea for the first time, never have meeting each other. Quite honestly, I didn't know anybody that was in my group. None of us really knew each other. A few of us had some familiarity. It just kind of immediately connected for me that how many times we try to start a project without having that informal interaction first. So we'll establish a project team and then you jump right into the work versus taking a step back and saying, hey, folks, we have a project coming. Let's all just get to know who we are and our roles and how we thrive best in the work that we do. It's a 30-minute meeting that to me would make that first kickoff meeting 10 times better. Because if we went back to this after that first walk, we would have had a very different conversation because we would have been coming to the table with a familiarity. And it just is, it just was this reminder that we keep coming back to on projects where I was like, we need to start before the kickoff. Let's such like, and we forget that. And that walking was like a really good reminder of that. So
Sarah,
just
were
want to draw
you
that
in the
connection in my
group?
head.
Was your group did you do the solo crossword last? Like,
I think you did the
Nope.
map last.
No, we
oh,
did it second to last. Second to
okay.
last. Yeah. We
It wasn't
finished with the whiteboard.
when Brett and I were walking around watching, because every group started at one of the different settings. The first group that did the solo crossword puzzle, they just stayed in their seat. It was very, very quiet. And then by the time the last group was at the solo carols, they actually moved all of their seats
Yes.
towards each other. So by
Uh,
that point, they've already done 3 exercises together and they were really vibing. So
That's
I think that speaks to what you're just saying.
it literally that's absolutely what happened. It built because when that was our third to last thing, and we were like already at like we were like at the Thanksgiving table of the family. We're just sitting and yelling to each other from the rooms, moving all around. What do you got? This is what I got. Like the familiarity made such a difference just going through those moments of exercises. Right, Ramsey. Sorry.
Yeah,
that
in
was
40 in
no,
40
good.
take
minutes
us.
in 40 minutes that happened. That's, I think that's the
Yeah.
crazy thing
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
with no real you weren't doing and I mean, the fact you forget you're doing something and you just do it, and as the result of doing it, you start to get to know people in a very comfortable way that didn't because you're not working on something that's somehow like meaningful to your job or, an OKR or the kind of seriousness you're talking about, Sarah, that, everything has a consequence and I have to do this right and I have to do that right. Instead of taking a minute and saying, you know what, this isn't about anything other than you connecting and building a relationship. And so we're going to do something that's abstract to allow you to let your guard down and relax so that you can connect with people. And I think that is something that very, very rarely happens anymore in most team settings or especially in project based things where you're bringing people from all different organizations. together, it's really hard to get people to let their guard down because they're ready to defend their position and their territory. And and so the idea that we might get people to forget about that for a minute and come with greater connection and maybe more empathy just right off the bat
Mhm.
because they feel more connected.
Yeah, so we did the huddle around the map activity first, and crossword, then whiteboard, then the walk. I'm pretty sure that was our progression in our team. I really liked the kind of somewhat standing posture or like huddled around a table working on something together. I think, Brett, I may have mentioned this to you. When technology is infused, it drives a presenter, or it drives people apart from each other to work independently on their screen while on some. So imagine that as a Miro board. It completely changes the dynamic. And so I think the idea of analog activity around a table, preferably or conceivably standing, is a really interesting typology of meeting that again, technology actually doesn't help there at all. It makes it worse. It causes someone to be presenter, especially, or driving, and that they end up being the conduit of what gets typed into post-it notes, also nonsense, right? Place. But so that was really interesting. Probably my favorite, although so I'm dyslexic. So crosswords are murder,
Ah,
right?
me
Like
too.
brutal. Okay.
I
Like
do
I can't. So
I
I
do
cheated.
crosswords
I pulled
because of
out
my
OpenAI. I
dyslexia.
used Claude that
I try
moment.
to.
I did. I'll admit
Yeah.
it today
It's
on screen.
On
Um,
record.
it is. It's on record. I absolutely did not want to look like an idiot that dyslexia often makes you do. But anyway, I did think of some of them on my own. Um, but the walking meeting was really interesting for me. So it was the last one, and it reminded me of like taking walks and talking with dad. Like it really lowered the what there's something about the physicality of just walking, and you're not around a table in this very formal setting of like, okay, now what's your job and da. It because you're all kind of migrating the same direction, and you look sideways towards each other and kind of engage while walking. It's really interesting. Great idea. Like, um, I like the kind of informality of that that helped people and it was on a topic that was more personal for us. I assume they were all the same for everybody, but it was the like thing that you do to like relax and kind of unplug, if I recall correctly. Sandy, you'll have to remind me of the exact question, but something to that effect. And what we do to like detox from work, and the activities were very different from each other. So anyways, I found all of
well,
those really effective.
and Ramsey, you're touching on the walking thing came from a lot of conversations. I mean, my personal experience, I got to a place being part of a really large organization where I would only, to the extent possible, and sometimes practically we couldn't, but to the extent possible, I took all one-on-ones as walking meetings. And then
Mm.
it got to where during the pandemic, I would request that I'd say, I'm going to go for a walk. You don't have to go for a walk, but I'm going to go for a walk while we're talking. And I'm not going to be taking notes. I'm not going to be, if you want to record the conversation, we can record the conversation, but I just want to walk because I will be more connected to you if I do this, even if we're not in the same place. Me walking, I don't know about you guys, when I get on a phone, someone call, I cannot if it's a short call, I can sit still. If it's more than like 2 minutes, I'm walking around while I'm talking. So if I'm ever talking to any of you, I probably have it on speaker and I'm walking someplace if I don't have my AirPods in. And I think it is for me also, I then remember the conversation, a lot of the
Mhm.
details better because I was in a place and saw a thing, and that there's a connection in my brain. If I don't change settings, I'm in the same place. And especially if it's back to back to back meetings in the same room, it all blurs together in your brain. Um, the, the other piece was the table. Sandy and I did an exercises in the first event we did last year where we looked at the difference between you and I sitting the distance apart you would sit at a table, and then you pull the table away and see how it feels. And there's a weird thing. You're actually pretty close when you're sitting there with a table. And when the table's not there, you're like, whoa, let's back up a little bit.
Ah,
Like if you know the person really well, you're okay with it. If you don't, it feels close. So there is a definite there is a psychological
Interesting.
effect to having a piece of furniture between you and somebody else. And then also the idea of a chair that, like, you think about the lean back. I can lean back and get away, to your point, Ramsey. Like, I'm not, might not be facing you. I'm walking sideways. And when I'm walking sideways with shoulder to shoulder, we have this connect, like, we're kind of equals at that point. There is no assertion of dominance of any kind because you're
Right.
walking parallel. And so I think there's all sorts of stuff that's built up into that. And, to the
Mhm.
extent that it's possible, I mean, something I tried to do was, set up walking routes and have them available so people knew, oh, that's a 30-minute meeting because that's a 30-minute route and that's a 15-minute meeting or an hour. Like, you could actually select that as a room on a calendar, and then that was the path you would go take together. And
Nice.
I think little simple things like that to get people to
It's awesome.
consider the a meeting does not have to happen within four walls of a meeting room, or a conversation doesn't need to happen, and just expanding all of our thinking, because we are so stuck in, we're so busy, we're so overbooked and overwhelmed. You just hit the easy button and you do the thing you've always done because it's the thing you've always done. And
Totally.
part of this is, showing everyone that if we have a little more intentionality, we can in fact have a much more vibrant experience in the day.
You actually brought up, you reminded me, because the other meetings I remembered a lot more for the, like you said, like the tactile, the hands-on. I actually love the height of the table too, right? Because one, it was seated height, so it's an accessible height. But also, like, there was something about having to, for us that are able to stand, we're able to lean over and into that brought an intimacy in. So we're not starting at a standing height table either. That feels like it has this sense of temporariness. And of course, it's not approachable. It's not accessible for all. But what you did remind me is, like, I was so uncomfortable in the conference room. I was so uncomfortable when we were sitting around the table, even though we are having kind of a funny conversation.
Right.
Like, I almost felt like trapped in there because we did all the stuff we needed to do, but then the work was like, but we were ahead of time. So then when the time was like, oh, but it was like one of those things where it's like, well, we have 30 minutes on the calendar, so let's use 30 minutes. Like, we didn't leave the room. We waited, like, we stayed in there and we just kind of kept talking the last 10 or 15 minutes. But like, it just felt like trapped unnecessarily, and it actually felt a little bit more stagnant, and like it served its purpose and then it needed to move on. Whereas I think if we asked it the same prompt in a different situation, like, it made me think of, when do you actually really need to be in a conference room? Like, what actually requires you to sit at a table and have a discussion in a formal
Yeah.
conference room setting? I'm very, very, actually, none of those tasks did. So I think, to me, I was just curious about that as a output.
And Sarah, it's something I've talked about a lot lately, and Sandy and I have, we don't know how to tackle this yet, but if you think about it, a conference room really, people can say a conference room is designed to allow you to have acoustical privacy. So we're not going to bother you. The reality is a conference room is me deciding who gets to hear what I'm going to say. And that is
Mhm.
really the purpose that a conference room serves, is deciding who's in
Yeah.
and who's out and who's part of the conversation. And
You-
so I would definitely challenge it. Like, this is something we should really look at, exploring. How
Yeah.
do we do this better and differently? That is not a prerequisite, because what else, to your point, what else is it doing? It is providing an acoustic separation at the moment.
Yeah.
That is only value.
I
Yep.
think, I mean, if we've talked about this a bit, it does provide some amount of psychological safety,
Logical
but then
safety.
there are other ways to provide that. So what can we do with that?
So that's interesting, Sarah, to outline the conference room. So this for us was the caption on the dog image. That's
Yeah.
where the
Right.
only
Yep.
time, okay, we were in a conference room. I assume that was intentional. The least favorite of the entire day. That, like,
Mhm.
of all the meeting
Yep.
types, of all the activities, not the
Hands down.
activity per se, but the format of being in a white conference room. By the way, I'll let Pivot know, like, that room needs some life in it. It was the least favorite. It wasn't because of the people or the activity per se, but the setting was
Nope.
probably the least.
Yeah.
So that's
Interesting.
really interesting, Brett,
Yep.
to consider. How do we have otherwise acoustical private uh, meetings, and walking allows that, which is really interesting. If you went a different place just to walk, you could have an otherwise private conversation and not have to be in a white room with a white table and chairs.
Well, Yeah, there's a lot of logistics around it, but I think that Sandy very intentionally made the most kind of it's an open-ended creative brainstorming fun activity and then put you in a room with a
in
door
a box.
sitting around a table. And it
So that was
just the
by
kind of
design.
and now you got but
Yeah.
you felt it and you're experiencing this
Yeah.
idea that you could that activity done in one of the other settings would be completely different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you probably we
Yep.
one thing we could do is test, you know, do you come up with more ideas and better ideas when you're not in the room than when you are?
I
I
would
Yeah.
think
say,
that's the thing. It would be interesting to have repeated a similar type of task, right? Even if it was caption this over the 4 settings to see what one might have, yeah, bubbled
yeah,
something up differently.
that would be
Mm,
interesting. So
mm,
we'll share that one of the reasons we put you in the box is because we had the 4 groups and we wanted your setting to be the same because the intention for this one was if we change your process, does that influence the outcome? So 2 of the groups there's 2 rounds. 2 of the groups were working together on the captions the whole time. And then the other 2 groups were taking the first round to work separately, and then in the second round come together and work together. So we needed to control your environment to some degree so that we could see how the outcomes, how that influenced the outcomes. So we're
mm,
actually this one was probably least enjoyable for you all, and the most I mean, one of the most insightful ones for us on the back end because we're still analyzing the audio from each of these rooms. And so we heard everything.
Yep.
And
nice.
uh,
Great.
something that so we're still going, yeah, we're still going through it. But some of the things that are coming up are the groups that work together the whole time, hearing there's more bursts of laughter throughout the time together. We're also going to look at the frequency of just dialogue because sometimes there's like these longer pauses between people sharing and seeing that more with the groups that were working apart first and then having to like be vulnerable and share their what they came up with individually with the whole group.
And in terms of there was a big difference between which one generated more ideas.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
the group that was or the groups that were working together the whole time, um, they had like 13-ish. They came up with like 13-ish. And then the other groups that were working separately and then together came up with about 26. And it was interesting because both of those groups came up with approximately the same number, like 26 for
Mm,
both of
And
those.
and approximately half.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we need to look at too is
yeah.
like, were they decidedly more or less creative or was it because what we're talking about is a difference in the quality of the experience and the way that
Yeah.
people seem to act and interact with one another. But the point of all this being that we think this is the level of detail we all need to get into to understand
Yeah.
and to help businesses understand what they can do differently and more effectively that go beyond, Sarah, to your point that you made earlier, that just common courtesy sorts of things that are really just like housekeeping and maintenance around meetings and not being, not screwing up someone's calendar because of the way you operate. This is more about the the specific details of what you are actually doing and how more importantly how you're actually doing it that the workplace world has really never been involved with. But the funny thing is there's all sorts of organizational consultants and meeting consultants out there, and I think what we're trying to do is bring together the learning and the behavioral science behind a lot of these things to physical spaces and the things we know and the artifacts in the furniture, the technology, all these things to find some new ideas to just say, hey, maybe we can create some new normal, like some new norms and some new forms of normal that people can start to embrace that bring more value and don't make you feel like you're trapped in a box or don't make you feel like you're, wasting your time. And that's ultimately what this is all about.
The interesting thing too, and I really, really like that. The more you talk, the more you want to unpack the experiences more, quite honestly, which is why they're also so brilliantly structured. The other thing that was really fascinating about the conference room, mind you, right, we've already been through all these vignettes together, so we are now familiar with each other, right? We've established where we love to find our retreats to criticizing folks' drawings because we clearly all feel very strongly about drawing in our field, but when we got to the conference table, we quickly turned into a consensus culture. And when we sat down, the
Mm.
level of politeness and sanity, you definitely will hear this. You will hear,
Yeah.
and to me, it was the best example of saying you cannot just tell people to go into a room how much they knew each other. Because at this point we had familiarity, right? You can't tell people to just go into a conference room and collaborate. Like it doesn't work. And yeah, we came up with less ideas, but then also it's because I stopped putting forward ideas that were funny because I was realizing that other people in the room thought they were funny, even if I thought they were still good ideas. So I started like shutting down my opinions or my thoughts or my take because I realized that, oh, they're not reacting to me. So I want to create like it became more of that consensus, polite culture that actually
Right.
took away from Ramsey, like you were saying, the best thing the art school ever gave me is like how to actually take a critique, right? And I think that's the thing that that was not there. And it was
Mm.
also these things of like acknowledging we're all different. What we find funny is very different. Where we find our humor is very different. How we talk about things when we're stuck in silence is very different. So I think that to me is more about what a conference room demands of people that approach things from different areas of either neurodiversity, introvert versus extrovert,
Mm.
all the above. Like it just that little box
Mm.
said a lot to me. The more that I sit with
Mm.
it, also the audio layover is gonna be hilarious because we just started talking about dogs and random things. But
Oh,
yeah,
it's great. Yeah.
So something kind of emerges here that you're making me think about as all of you've spoken about that activity. So somehow the invite for the meeting and the setup of it gave me permission mentally to allow the event to go as as you designed it. And what I mean by that is, to your points are about like sometimes spaces are designed, Brett, you touched on too, like they're designed to say something to the people in the organization. And that is not always necessarily kumbaya. Okay. It is very intentional hierarchy, productivity, who's in, who's out, like to your earlier point, Brett, about you're not invited to this meeting, that kind of thing. But yet I knew for the afternoon, I hate to say it this way, I had permission to let that meandering go. I know, right? Like it's blocked out on my calendar. My partner understood what was going, it was like, okay, clearance to fly. The meeting room was the time that it felt like it slipped back to this weird, like it did. And
stagnation
everything
thing,
else
like
kind of
just
didn't.
something.
And
Mhm.
but that dichotomy, this is, I think, the challenge. I guess that another big insight I had learning of the day was how to balance hierarchy, accountability, productivity, exploration, familiarity, interaction without title or whatever. Like that we order ourselves in the workplace very sensitively, I think, to that stuff. Like it's
Mhm.
really interesting to see how that happens. And our spaces almost can accentuate that. And maybe that's intentional, sadly. Um, Yet productivity, creativity, other aspects of what we hope we garner by being physically together in work are actually not that. Like we want the benefits of
And
those.
it can't be that.
Right. And so that
Yeah.
duality or that like polarity, that was a really interesting insight. And how you can toggle one to the other. How do you promote one while kind of diffusing and pushing down another? Like that thing. And I am struck by the idea that the meeting room made me feel the most like, oh, here we go. Plugged right back
Mhm.
into
Yeah.
this kind of stacking
Yeah.
nature of what we do at work sometimes. So,
Which
Well, because
probably has a
also
lot
it
to do with
immediately
the
makes somebody take command at the table. Oh, sorry, Brett.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
totally.
mhm.
Well, I think this has a lot to do with why a lot of people don't want to spend much time in the office because it's spent in conference rooms and where they would rather really not be. To the point of the command, I remember very distinctly getting to a place where you're leading a large organization and meetings, there would be a meeting set up that you were technically supposed to be the leader and decision maker in. You're probably running late because you've been back to back in meetings. You get in the room and they've left the chair at the head of the table. And
Yep.
I very intentionally got to a place where I'd be like, I'm not sitting there. Someone else can sit there, but I'm not sitting there
I just
because
did that this week.
well, and then I had to get to where I would just take those chairs out and say, well, no one's going to sit there then. We're all going to sit. And even things like if you came to a conference room and it was just chairs and there was no table and everybody would just sit around in hierarchy, it changes immediately. And so I think there's little nuanced things that make a huge difference in the perception of these things and how the experience is for everyone in the room. And the tough part about an enclosed space like this and just meetings in general is all it takes is one person to make it uncomfortable for everybody else. And it's, and so I think there's so much to learn here. I know we're about up with time we're about at the end of the hour. Sandy, is there anything last things you wanted to ask?
Yeah, burning questions. Yeah, encore. No, with both of your experiences, as you come from different perspectives, you both have a really good insight into what we need in the industry. If you could have us study anything in this format, regardless of how we do it, so don't worry about the practicality of it, what it would be a valuable thing to you in your work for us to be studying and figuring out how to measure, quantify?
So I'll take a stab at that. Uh, when I realized what the event was about early and kind of got like mentally cued, my first impulse was I really want to know what drives what drives connection, productivity, creativity, and other things as furnishings. So the first pass was like, well, how do I make this into furniture? And the answer may very well be that furniture is not the point, and that's okay. Like it might be space design or meeting design or human like protocols for like how to like achieve something regardless of furniture. But I know first impulse is like, how do I make this into a product? So I'm an entrepreneur at heart. Like, of course, like how do we make money doing this? But I guess the other thing is like I've wondered like if we gathered the right information data and observations, could we actually put creativity in a bottle, so to speak? Could we like find a way to like set up you do these 5 things and the likelihood of good outcomes of creativity come out of that? Like, I want to know. I really do. I, I think we're all expected to be performing at pretty high levels. I mean, a friend of mine's an executive coach like Ramsey. You have to look at performance and work like you do on a court or wherever on a stage or whatever. Like everything's a presentation. Everything is a performance. Everything like you're trying to heighten those experiences and not to like extract more from people, but to like elevate and do better. And I agree with that. And so I'm like, how do we go find out what that is? And yeah, if furniture supplemented that process, I'm really, really interested in that. So for me, it's like, how do I physically connect human psychology and the nature of that and physical objects of furniture or of workspace, like soft architecture, whatever. So that's maybe one part of your answer.
I'm gonna probably say the exact same thing, just a little bit of a different way. So weird because like I think when you get all of us in the room, like the minds that you brought together and the people that you brought together, we kind of all are chasing the same things and just the ideas that have just come out of those exercises just keep going. So it's almost like I want like the lightest and littlest theme is all that's needed. Like I almost don't want to give you something like I would love to talk about this next. I actually don't want to give that to you because I don't think that's not helping us and it hasn't helped us in the past. I think it's a curiosity of like, we have a hypothesis to test. That's how I would love to just approach everything. I have a hypothesis to test. And how do we actually then, what's the hypothesis? I firmly believe that we should actually get rid of all private spaces, right? Whatever it might be. And how would we then put ourselves through our own experiment to put us through that life? Like, so that's almost like I just would rather keep it like that. I think where I am, and I think a lot of people that are kind of in the position of leading this for an organization, we always run into the conundrum of like, how do we convey the good that we are trying to do to our leaders to say, this isn't superfluous. This isn't entitlement. This isn't X, Y, and Z. This is all those buzzwords you want to talk about. This is innovation. This is creativity. This is productivity. This is collaboration. This is community. You name it. Like,
Yeah.
right? The pandemic gave us nothing short of a buzzword list of human things that our leaders want us to create, but we have not said, how does the space meet the people where they're at? And I've been saying this for a while now. It's like, and I think the pandemic gave us the privilege to say, wow, we have been exhausting ourselves meeting the space where it's at. We have been exhausting ourselves trying to fit how we all work into a cookie cutter approach of desks, conference rooms, and if you're lucky, maybe a wellness room in a lounge, weirdly placed that you'll never use and probably judged on. And then it didn't work. So therefore, get rid of the lounges. Like, just, okay. But like, we've been always trying to conform ourselves in a place that we spend so much of our waking hours to. And I'm just like, how do we just flip that? How do we say, how does this space meet us where we're at? And that's what I'm trying to figure out. And I think that's what I loved with the conversations that we had. And because what the conference room did, we were meeting the space where it's at. The space didn't meet us. And so that's the thing that I'm always trying to figure out is like, how do I then start articulating that conversation that says, no, this is not entitlement to say the space needs to meet our employees where they're at, whether it's through disability, neurodiversity, creativity, however it might be, right? Distraction, non-distraction, privacy, non-privacy, how we can unpack that all day. But like, that's, I think, our responsibility because that yields all of those things that we're seeing in the press every single day about why folks want to be coming back to the office and why people need to be in the office more. So figure out that for me, folks. That'd be great. But no, that's where I'm at. Like you're the seed. You're the hypothesis.
Serve that up.
Yeah. But
But
I
that's
think that's
fantastic,
that's
Sarah.
kind of my mission right now that I'm trying to bring to the table.
Well, and that's amazing. So I think, Sarah, the takeaway for me, in what you just said is that if we can focus on outcomes, meaningful business outcomes that show that there is more, that not only does the organization succeed and have better outcomes, but the teams that make up the organization are better and the individuals are rewarded for it. That to me is a really healthy ecosystem within any organization. And it will, and if the organization is built on a solid business model, it is going to succeed if we can do those things. So if we as a workplace community can get to where we're focused on how to help deliver business outcomes, and I say a lot, we need to get out of the world of being just seen as a cost center and to the point, of, well, it's just stop complaining and just show up and do the thing. Cause this is what we've all done and we
Yes.
all suffered through it. So this is what we need to do. Instead of acknowledging that it was
Yep.
never really it was never that well designed in the first place. Let's acknowledge that it wasn't. It's on all of us. We've all been part of it.
Yep.
We can do better though. And if we do better, I think that businesses that adopt this way of, sort of a new way of thinking about it will succeed and will see improved outcomes in the work that their teams and individuals do, which is going to keep shareholders happy because they're going to have a successful organization. It all
Yeah.
to me comes together, and it is not at all touchy feely. Get to for us, the challenge is getting to a place where people can experience this. Don't see it as touchy feely. See it as they forgot that they were doing something that was an experience, and they just remembered or learned for the first time that, wow, this can be different. I can actually get more value out of this if we just do it a little differently than we've always done it. So thank you to both of you for
Lead
making
with
time for this.
purpose
This was
and with
awesome.
pride. Like so
Yes,
good.
That's
Like
awesome.
nobody like that's people just want our employees to have so much pride in who they work for and the work they do and how they get after it. Like nothing
Mm.
is better than a proud employee. And if we do it with purpose, like you all set up this event, we get that. We could do it. I'm
Yeah.
an optimist.
Sure.
Sorry, but I didn't mean to steal your wrap
Love
up
it.
thunder. You
No,
got
that
me
was
excited.
fantastic. That was
I think we're
fantastic.
to
But thank you.
That's why we're doing what
Yeah.
we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was just going to say thank you both for, just taking time on the day. And like Ramsey, you're sarcasm and your silliness. Very
Yeah.
appreciated. You both brought a lot of energy. And thank you for
Thanks.